Well, hello and welcome to this session of ExecuNet Master Class. I'm your host, as always, Tony Vlahos, and my guest this hour is the renowned career strategist and former executive recruiter, ExecuNet's own Saundra. So job creation is up, and yet many are reporting that they aren't getting the jobs they want and that they really expected would be offered to them. Today, Saundra will tell you why that might be so and what you can do to get the offer that's right for you. Really important stuff and a part of our daily commitment here at ExecuNet to connect you with trusted voices, people like Saundra, who can show you how to pivot to your best career and ultimately have the life that you want. I am always delighted to introduce today's guest. Saundra Botts is an ExecuNet career strategist who uses the inside information gained from her prior experience in retained and contingency executive search to assist executives in career transition. She has been a part of over 850 executive landings, and in 2008, she began facilitating workshops and webinars on the topic of LinkedIn for job seekers, and was a featured lecturer on LinkedIn for Hult International Business School's MBA and MA programs job search curriculum. With that brief intro, welcome back, Saundra, to the ExecuNet stage. They are all yours.
Thank you, Tony. As you mentioned, this has been the primary support question that we've been getting from our members. I have never interviewed for a job and not actually gotten a job offer before in my life. And what the heck is going on here? We also hear I've nailed every conversation I've ever had with all these stakeholders that I've been talking to for this particular role, and then they hear crickets. But what's even worse than crickets is, of course, getting feedback that either doesn't make any sense or is feedback that they knew was an issue to begin with, such as a lack of experience is a particular thing that was very obvious from the beginning. And this confuses a lot of our members. And, especially when they go through the whole process and they think they're on the same page, and then they do get an offer, but the offer's $100K less than their last role. So these are some of the most common shock responses that we get from executives, particularly when this is the first time they've ever had to go on a job search at this level. You get to the level in your career where you've got the most experience that you've ever had in your whole life, and now for the first time you're coming in second, or not even placing. And this is not the first time that I've heard this from executives. I mean, it's certainly been more prevalent lately, but I've heard this a lot in my career. It used to amaze me that, in times when the economy would take dives, there were certain people that were always in demand, no matter what. They had no problem getting offers. There were times when the market was good, and yet people would be very confused that they've had the most experience that they've had their whole life and they couldn't get there. And that's when I really started to dig into the topic to figure out what exactly was going on. And I would talk to my clients, and I talk to the companies, and I get debriefings, and I get debriefing from the candidate side, and there was a lot of discrepancy. So that's when I really started trying to ease some of the pain and create some clarity around why these things happen. And I feel sometimes like there's this big giant curtain behind what actually happens in your career when you're an executive, what changes. And there's a lot of things about the job search and about your career that do change when you become an executive. I think the best place to start is probably the job opportunity bell curve. And this is not something that they teach you When, you know, you're getting your degrees or your advanced degrees, it's not something they teach you in corporate America. You'll just be lucky if you can observe that this actually happens. And what happens is when you come out of school and everybody's, you know, not really got much experience, but they've got lots of drive and energy and they've got a good education, that's kind of a level playing field. And then you get to the stage in your career where you've got the work experience necessary to know how to do the job, but you're still at that worker bee area. And if you look at the shape of a pyramid, you see that that's a level of the pyramid where there are still lots of seats, lots of spots in the org chart, if you will. And so there is a lot of opportunity out there. And a lot of opportunity for people who want to actually do the work. A lot of times these are people that, you know, aren't really as concerned about their quality of life issues. So they'll work even harder. And then what happens as you approach the top of the pyramid, you get to the downside, once again, of the job opportunity bell curve, which means at the top of the pyramid, there's less positions. And what happens is because there's less positions, there's not enough seats for everybody that want them. And the positions come along fewer and farther in between. And so what that creates is a scenario where the supply and the demand is not in your favor. So whenever the supply and demand is not in your favor, or you're taking a product to market that the supply and demand is not in your favor, a very crowded market, there has to be something that stands out very clearly, not necessarily in the product description or the experience or the story behind it, but rather the ROI story, the what's in it for them. And the bigger the position, the more important the problems are that they need to solve. But what happens is the stakeholders, when you get to this level, the stakeholders don't necessarily do what you do. So I like to split it into two parts of the org chart. There's the 97%, which those are the people who report into people who do what you do. You know, as I did accounting and finance headhunting. So if I was working with a CFO that was filling a controller position, they knew very clearly what product description they needed. They could list me a set of skills and experiences that were necessary, and those are usually who they'd hire. And in the 3%, which would be like a CEO hiring a CFO, let's say, they don't do what you do, but that's why they need you. So the audience is very different. This audience that you're marketing yourself to in the 3%, and primarily all ExecuNet does is advice for the 3%. It doesn't have to be C-level. It could be a manager title in some companies. But basically, you've reached the stage of compensation. Usually that's over 200K, where that's a pretty big spend, and you better have a business case behind it, not just a, wow, I really like the guy. And it's solving a very important problem or getting them to an important stage that they need to get to. So they don't necessarily know which skills and experiences are the absolute right fit for the job.